Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being here with presence and intention and love and to know a little bit more about us and what we provide for this world that is very important. And thank you, Nora, for receiving me here. I'm very happy and grateful.
Very happy that you're sharing stage with me. So Zaya, maybe you can tell us about the work that you do. And while we were preparing, we had a lot of discussion about ancestry as well.
Yeah.
And how we are, it's true that the indigenous groups are guardians of the earth, but they're also the wisdom keepers.
Yes.
And that wisdom, you know, we're talking a lot about transgenerational knowledge. We know now on a biomolecular level that it's true, that it happens. So I guess it's the same for wisdom. There are some things that you are doing and that you are sharing that are definitely coming from past generations.
Yes. Everything that I'm doing and being and going in my journey, it's surrounded by the representation that I want to see in the world. We are the true guardians and owners of different lands in the world, but also we are not just in the forest. We need to be also in the inclusion, decision makers in the world. And when I passed for so much different violence in my life, living in the forest with my family, I always had the dream also to go to a city and maybe represent my people in the way that I want, pass them their message, but in also my way and the way that they believe that we should share with this world. And when I went to a big city, my first time was my 15, and I discovered that the fashion industry did have any inclusion of indigenous people working in that, as another many different industries. And I was asking myself, why? I know that black people also today has a huge community and voice in the world, but I believe that indigenous people can also have, you know, and not suffer so much racism and discrimination. So then I started to fight for inclusion in Brazil, what was very hard and difficult because even in Brazil has this stardom of the colonial side. The stardom where everything has this state of mind where it's not in the way that is permitted, you know, allowed to have more new voice or people that is there in presence with their own body, you know. And I try to question everyone, why has not indigenous people here? And people actually, because I was fighting and asking, they are saying no to me. No, you're not going to be in this campaign. No, you're not going to do that. You're not going to do castings. Was a kind of a truly nightmare. But I keep fighting because it was something that I believe that we had to have more opportunity. In the sense that, for example, if today, yesterday we had a horrible message, horrible news in Brazil through this new government. You can imagine if has more indigenous people work inside the government, could be a different reality where we had our own place and voice and fight to be standing for, but also fight for the new generation and our elders, where we have the opportunity to be there talking about it and be there voting and fighting for. What I know Eloy before explained here, and Sonia Guajajara, they are fighting against this Congress and the politicians where they want to grow the economy, not thinking about who is living there in that territory or community. They want to take the resources at any cost to give here to the international countries but not thinking who is living there or suffer with that genocide.
Yep. And it's interesting that you bring this up because it's one thing to have your voice heard, it's another for people to listen to you and apply the knowledge that you're sharing or the direction, the hopeful direction that you're giving. And within your work, this is something you're trying to do, and with the work of the people that we've seen in this panel, but as a young activist, do you feel that the work that you're doing is being, and again, excuse for the word that I'm going to use, but easier now that there has been a little bit more, I would say, voices being heard? And like I said, it's one thing to be heard, it's another for people to apply the knowledge that you're sharing.
Yeah.
Do you feel that at the moment? And is fashion, because one of your medium is fashion.
Yeah. I don't feel easy at all. I think it's getting harder and harder every single day because fashion industry is the second hugest pollution that produce pollution in the planet. Also waste. And when I work with a client, I make sure that he understands that he can put in his company ways to be recycling, you know, and ways to be sustainable, doing new regenerative materials or products, or bringing to people solution that if you wear a clothes for 5 years from this brand, you can come back to the brand with the same clothes and they're gonna renew these clothes and resell again. And this is one of the solutions that is sustainable, that I believe that it's not about just being a campaign on a face a campaign. I also fight for the future of this planet and how we can re-educate the new system and this youth, you know. So I also bring this way of that I know that many brands also we need to give the chance them to change. Because I know that it's not easy. All the time is a judgment side of different magazines and social medias on the brands saying that they are not changing, they are doing bad, they are doing photo print of animals and these things. But also we need to give time for now the changing, for what people are trying to elaborate and collaborate to do a new step forward where we're going to be in a sustainable future. Because it's the only solution for us. You know, we cannot come back. We are arriving in those days where we took so much resources from the planet, so much resources from nature, and we need to give a break to her recover herself,
regenerate,
you know, in regenerative way. So it's not easy, but I keep doing, you know, it's...
You're strong. One of the topic in fashion as well is cultural appropriation of patterns. And we talked about this, you and I, and it's true. Like, I mean, I know a pattern that's beautiful for a designer that sees it and is like, oh, I want to use this for my creative work. But it is fundamental that they recognize and they authorize, you know, they get the authorization through the people, through the culture that has created this pattern. And sometimes it can be a sacred pattern or a pattern that has a message. There's a lot of mythology and a lot of symbolism in some of the patterns, and they mean something. They actually have their form of language. And you using it, it feels, I mean, a brand using it without putting it into a context feels tone deaf. How do you work with that?
You know, for me, I always, since that I was kid, I have seen so many different ways of proper appropriation, cultural appropriation happening in different industries. But when I'm arriving in the big city that I fight against the fashion, telling them to change, they actually they did in another way around where they create girls inside the stardom where they say, oh, you have ancestrality with indigenous people because you look like. And then they told these girls to basically interact with Indigenous to the girls, I start to say that they are Indigenous, where actually they are not. And this was the first biggest cultural appropriation, where I saw myself in a place where they want someone to be in silence, work with this industry, and doing a representation that is not real. But also, we need, inside this system, we need to include Indigenous people and Black people inside of the board, inside of the system. People that are in the decisions behind, not just who is being exposed outside.
Yeah.
And it has cultural appropriation with many brands that use prints of our craftsmanship and different things that don't belong to them, and they just saw, oh, it's beautiful, let me use that in my brand because it's going to be nice. But actually it's not. Who they are inspiring with that. And we need to ask ourselves. And also, I think a lot of people need to adopt to themselves a way of just doing your personality. And also, one of the things in our culture that we are so connected with nature, that is what I tell to people from here, from the West Society. Nature is a way to you connect with yourself. But here as create this concept of nature, but people don't really know what it is until see with their own eyes, you know, or feel with the experience. So I think also when people connect with themselves, they start to understand that if this don't belong to me, I'm not gonna do it. Or if it's right, okay, I'm gonna do what is right. If this is wrong, I'm not gonna go for it because it's wrong. You start to respect another cultures. You start to respect the way that people believe, the way that people have their life. And here, when I arrived the first time last year in Europe, I didn't speak any English, and I was so judged just by the fact that, you know, as an Indigenous woman, you arrive in the country that is developed, and you just expect people to be humble and receive you with this harmony way, this positive way, that I'm also here to fight for something that is much more big, is a cause. And was not that way. And I adapt myself to be inside of this code just to represent them, but also to understand what is necessary today to fight for here too. Because I think everyone here can learn so much more through the ecological knowledge that we have, and also combine this with technology. And I know that people, it's amazing this conference, and I know that a lot of people is also giving a lot of importance to technology. It's one part, it's very important, but also how are you guys gonna go forward in the planet if it's just technology and has no nature? For example, in the Amazon, people don't really know what's going on there, the war inside of the trees. People just see from the satellites, the drones. And this is so sad because it's so much more things happening there. And I think it's, sorry, I'm going to prolong too much. I'm going to say too much things.
But
sorry.
when we were preparing, you and I started this panel for those of you that were here at the beginning. Thank you. Last year when we spoke, we had the great Kawawa, who came from Brazil, who is an incredible woman. And when she started the panel, she summoned ancestry into the panel. And you and I, when we were preparing, we talked a lot about your grandmother as well.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe you could share something that you've learned.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I think for Indigenous people, I mean, you're much younger than me, but for us to continue to carry the voices of our ancestry, we need to continuously be connected to them through the spirit,
Yes.
and also through everything that we can retain from what we were exposed to. And some of it comes naturally, but you spoke so highly of her and so beautifully of her. Maybe you can share something that was the fundamental thing that helps you in your activism.
Yeah. A lot of people ask me where my inspiration comes from, and comes from my grandmother and my mother. The community which I grew up, doesn't exist today. People know about it because it was a huge genocide that happened in the Amazon, where the deforestation 20 years ago was happening, and was in a very rude way, where the indigenous people didn't have any voice to fight for the land and our spiritual connection that we have with the land. And I was raised in the way that I was run away with my grandmother because she was suffering persecution together with my mom. Because my grandmother, she always fight for life. And she fight against to the loggers, to the farmers. She took like huge knife. And she was like, if you come here in my territory, you're gonna pay for it. And they arrived, they went for war that to really invade the land. But I think when she thought that they are really doing that, she was like, I need to save my family. I need to run. It's not my choice, but I need to do it. And then she took me, I was a kid, I was 4 or 5 years old. And my mom, that was a teenager, went have me, and we run. But I saw, at that moment, I actually, when I was born, my mom already felt that I had an important message. But when I was run away, I felt much more that my place here gonna be recognized. And I want her to be recognized. I know the different ethnicities in the world to be recognized. Different territories where we can share the resources, but we don't want to be taken from us. Because we are the guardians when we take care of the whole nature. It's not just for us, it's for the whole humanity. And she inspired me in the biggest way where I need to fight for my life and others. The way that she did was too much machist weight surround her.
Yes.
And she was just trying to carry this very strong feminine message of the modern nature. And her connection was extremely strong with the land. I saw her, I know that it's very, very hard to say that even for me, like, when we were running, I saw her like putting herself on the floor and crying for the land as is the part of her own body. And this is the connection that the elders has with the land. Because when they take the plants, the magical side, to connect with another dimensions, they connect straight with the land because it's what makes them to reconnect with another cultural way of future and past. And then I had that, seeing her, and I was like, oh my God, I'm her generation. I'm from the same blood and same lineage. Yes. I need to use the intelligence. I need to use my knowledge to connect with people and spread message to the world, to save our culture, to save the way that we are in balance with nature. And this was the huge inspiration that I had in life.
Your grandmother's name?
Is Joanna.
So in closing of this panel, I'd like to dedicate this panel to our grandmother's ancestor, Joanna, and my grandma, Coco. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sister.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.